My name is Monica, and I guess I should start from the beginning if you want to understand how everything went so wrong. When I was little, things were actually pretty normal. We lived in this small house on Maple Street, me, my mom Sarah, and my dad Robert. Dad worked at the insurance company downtown, and Mom stayed home most of the time. She said she was taking care of me, but honestly, even as a kid I knew something wasn't right. Mom started drinking when I was around 10. At first it was just wine with dinner, but then it became wine at lunch, then wine in the morning. Dad would come home from work and find her passed out on the couch with empty bottles scattered around the living room. I remember having to make my own dinner a lot of nights because Mom was too drunk to cook anything. The worst part wasn't even the drinking though. Dad started getting suspicious about other things too. Mom would disappear for hours during the day, saying she was going grocery shopping or running errands. But she'd come back with no groceries and this weird guilty look on her face. Her phone was always buzzing with text messages that she'd quickly delete. One night when I was 12, I heard Dad confronting her about it. "Who were you with today, Sarah? And don't lie to me again. You're being paranoid, Robert. Maybe if you weren't such a boring husband, I wouldn't need to find other ways to entertain myself." That's when I knew for sure something was going on. Even drunk, Mom had this smug smile on her face like she was enjoying watching Dad suffer. He tried so hard to catch her cheating, but she was sneaky about it. He never found any real proof, just suspicious behavior and lies that didn't add up. The final explosion happened right after my 13th birthday. Dad came home early from work and found Mom's car in the driveway, but she wasn't in the house. He called her phone like 50 times, and she finally showed up 3 hours later with some story about visiting her sister. But her sister called that evening asking why Mom had missed their lunch date. "That's it, Sarah," Dad said. His voice was calm but scary. "I'm done with this, I'm filing for divorce." Mom just laughed. "Good luck proving anything, Robert. You have no evidence of anything except that I like to have a few drinks. Last time I checked, that wasn't illegal." The divorce process was a nightmare. They fought over everything: the house, the car, money, and especially me. Dad's lawyer argued that Mom was an unfit parent because of her drinking problem. Mom's lawyer tried to make Dad look like a controlling husband who wouldn't let his wife have any freedom. I had to talk to a court counselor about who I wanted to live with. It wasn't even a hard choice. Mom was drunk half the time and barely paid attention to me anymore. Dad was strict and serious, but at least he actually cared about my grades and made sure I ate real meals. "I want to stay with my dad," I told the counselor lady. "My mom drinks too much and she's never home anyway." The whole thing took almost a year to get settled. During that time, the house felt like a war zone. Mom and Dad wouldn't even talk to each other directly anymore. They'd make me carry messages back and forth like some kind of messenger pigeon. When the divorce was finally official, Mom packed up her stuff and moved to California. She said she had a friend out there who could help her get a fresh start. I think we both knew she was really just running away from her problems, but whatever. For the first couple years, we really did make it work. Dad was strict about homework and chores, but he wasn't mean about it. He made sure I ate vegetables and got to bed on time. We'd watch movies together on Friday nights and he'd help me with my math homework even though he hated math. Sure, he had a lot of rules. No staying out past 9 on school nights, no boys calling the house, no watching R-rated movies. But I understood he was just trying to protect me from turning out like Mom. I actually felt safe for the first time in years. But then everything changed when I turned 15. Dad met Linda at some work conference. She was a divorced single mom with 2 kids, Amy who was 12 and Jake who was 10. At first, Linda seemed nice enough when she'd come over for dinner dates. She'd smile at me and ask about school and act all interested in my life. After they'd been dating for about 6 months, Dad announced they were getting married. "Linda and I think it's time to make this official," he said one evening over dinner. "We're going to be a real family now." I tried to be happy for him, I really did. Dad deserved to find someone after all the crap Mom put him through. But something about Linda just felt wrong to me. She was too sweet, too perfect, like she was putting on an act. The wedding was small, just immediate family and a few friends from work. Linda moved in with her kids right after the honeymoon, and that's when her true personality finally came out. She started making little comments about me to Dad when she thought I wasn't listening. "I'm worried about Monica," she'd whisper to him in the kitchen. "She looks so much like Sarah. I hope she doesn't have the same problems her mother had." "Monica's nothing like her mother," Dad would say, but I could tell Linda's words were getting to him. "I know you want to believe that, Robert, but addiction runs in families. And the way she acts sometimes, so secretive and moody. It reminds me of how Sarah used to be." That's when I realized what Linda was doing. She was slowly poisoning Dad against me, making him see problems that didn't exist. Every normal teenage behavior got twisted into evidence that I was turning into Mom. If I wanted to hang out with friends, Linda would tell Dad I was being irresponsible and secretive. If I stayed in my room doing homework, she'd say I was being antisocial and hiding something. No matter what I did, she found a way to make it sound bad. "Robert, I found this music on Monica's computer," she'd say, showing him normal songs I'd downloaded. "The lyrics are so violent. I'm worried about the influence this is having on her." As a result, Dad would lecture me about choosing better music. She had this ability to make Dad paranoid about everything. When I wanted to go to a friend's birthday party, Linda would remind Dad about terrible things that could happen at teenage parties. When I asked to stay after school for study group, she'd suggest I was probably meeting boys instead. Amy and Jake, Linda's kids, caught on quickly. They realized they could get me in trouble by complaining to Linda about things I supposedly did. Amy was the worst. She'd break something and then run crying to Linda that I had pushed her. "Monica was so mean to me today," Amy would sob. "She said I was stupid and threw a book at me." None of it was true. But Linda would march to Dad with these stories, and he'd believe her kids over me every time. I tried defending myself, but it just made me look like I was lying. When I turned 16, Dad's rules became insane while Amy and Jake could do whatever they wanted. I wasn't allowed to have friends over because Linda said I was too irresponsible to supervise teenagers. I couldn't go to friends' houses either because Dad didn't trust other parents. "Monica needs structure and supervision," Linda would tell Dad. "She's at a dangerous age where kids start experimenting. Look what happened to her mother." Everything came back to Mom. Linda convinced Dad that I was doomed to become an alcoholic cheater just like Sarah. It didn't matter that I'd never been drunk or had a serious boyfriend. My social life disappeared. Friends stopped inviting me places because they knew I'd say no. I spent time alone in my room, which Linda used as more evidence that I was becoming antisocial. The worst part was watching Dad change. The man who used to help me with homework turned into this suspicious stranger who questioned everything I did. Linda had gotten so deep into his head that he couldn't see me as anything except a problem to be controlled. When I started looking at colleges during junior year, Linda jumped into the conversation. "Robert, we need to be careful about where Monica goes to school. College is where kids really go wild." "What do you mean?" Dad asked. "Well, dorms are unsupervised, kids drink, do drugs, have sex with random people. Monica's already showing signs of her mother's personality. Send her away to college, she'll probably end up just like Sarah." I couldn't believe it. "Dad, that's not true. I want to go to college to study and get a good job." But Linda had a response ready. "That's what they all say, Monica. My cousin went to Yale and was a good student just like you." But within 6 months, she was doing cocaine. By sophomore year, she'd dropped out and was living on the streets. These prestigious schools are the worst places for kids to lose their way. Dad's face went pale. I had no idea it was that bad. "Oh, it's terrible," Linda continued, "the peer pressure, the freedom, no parents around. And with Monica's family history." She didn't finish the sentence. That's when Dad made his ultimatum. "Monica, I'll pay for your college tuition, but only if you live at home and commute to a local school." "But Dad, I want to go to State University." They have the best program for what I want to study. Then you can study something else at the community college here. This isn't negotiable. I felt trapped. I couldn't afford college without Dad's help, and Linda knew it. She'd maneuvered the situation perfectly. And another thing, Linda added sweetly. If Monica is going to be living here through college, she needs to contribute more to the household. She should help with cooking, cleaning, and watching Amy and Jake. That sounds reasonable, Dad agreed. Monica, you'll help Linda with housework and babysitting. What started as helping quickly turned into me doing most of the work while Linda supervised and criticized. The house had to be spotless, meals perfect, and Amy and Jake's needs always came first. Nothing I did was ever good enough. And if I complained, Linda would tell Dad I was being disrespectful and ungrateful. I felt like I was disappearing in my own house. Dad barely talked to me except to give new rules or chores. Linda had turned me into the family servant while making herself look like the patient stepmother. College started and I thought things might get better since I'd be out more. But Linda made sure my workload at home increased. Every morning before classes, I had to make breakfast for everyone. After school, I'd come home to a list of chores Linda had written. Linda had this way of making everything sound reasonable while being completely unreasonable. I was doing the work of a full-time housekeeper and babysitter while trying to maintain good grades. Meanwhile, Amy and Jake never had to lift a finger. The basement situation happened during my sophomore year. I was 20 and still living at home, following Dad's college rules. Amy was 14 and had discovered social media, always making TikTok videos and YouTube content. One evening, Linda and Dad called me for a family meeting. I knew it wouldn't be good news. Monica, we've been thinking, Linda started. Amy's serious about her content creation, and she needs more space for equipment and filming. Okay, I said, unsure where this was going. So we're giving her your room, Dad announced. It has better lighting and more space. I stared at them. Where am I supposed to sleep? The basement is perfect for you, Linda said quickly. It's quiet, so you won't be disturbed studying. You can make it your own space. But it's cold and damp and there's barely any light. We'll help you fix it up, Linda promised. I tried to argue, but they'd decided. That same day, they moved my stuff downstairs. Dad's help was giving me an old couch with springs poking through and a broken dresser missing half its drawers. The basement was worse than I'd imagined. There was this musty smell that never went away, like old water damage and mold. The single tiny window was at ground level and barely let any sunlight in. The overhead light was this dim bulb that made everything look yellow. I spent the next week cleaning out years of junk. Old Christmas decorations, broken appliances, boxes of things that should have been thrown away. Nobody helped me. I had to get creative to make the space livable. I used old boards and bricks to build a desk. I found wooden crates and made them into a bookshelf. I put down every old rug I could find to cover the cold concrete floor. Living down there was like being forgotten. The family would have dinner upstairs and sometimes forget to save me food. I'd come up from studying and find dirty dishes but nothing left for me. Meanwhile, Amy was living it up in my old room, which they'd completely redecorated. They bought her new furniture, painted the walls, got her professional lighting equipment. The contrast was obvious. The bullying from Amy and Jake got worse. Since I was literally living below them now, they saw it as proof that I was beneath them. They'd make jokes about me being the basement dweller and call me mole person and cave girl. They'd sabotage me in sneaky ways. Amy would put too much salt in food when it was my turn to cook, then act innocent when everyone complained. Jake would accidentally spill things on clean laundry I'd folded. They'd break things and blame me. The debt notebook appeared after a pipe burst in the basement during junior year. I was at school when it happened, so I had no idea until I came home to find water all over my space. My textbooks were soaked, clothes ruined, and everything smelled worse. Linda was waiting with her arms crossed. Monica, look what you did. What I did? I wasn't even here. You must have hit the pipe with something. These things don't just burst on their own. Dad came downstairs carrying a notebook. "Monica, we need to talk about responsibility. Since you caused this damage, you're going to pay us back." "I didn't cause anything. It's your living space, so it's your responsibility," Linda said. "We're keeping track of your debts. The pipe repair is $800 to start." I couldn't believe it. "You're charging me for a pipe that broke while I wasn't home?" "That's how the real world works," Dad said. "When you rent an apartment, you're responsible for damages." "But I'm not renting this basement, you made me live down here." Linda wrote pipe repair, $800 in the notebook. "From now on, anything you break gets added to your tab. When you graduate and get a job, you'll pay us back every penny." That's when I realized they weren't planning to let me go after college. They were creating fake debt to keep me trapped indefinitely. Every accident got added to my debt. A scratched table, a stained towel, a broken glass, everything became my responsibility. I started recording conversations on my phone after that. I also took pictures of the basement conditions and the ridiculous charges. Something told me I might need evidence. The stress was getting to me. My grades stayed good because I was determined not to give them ammunition, but I was exhausted. I felt completely alone and trapped. I called my mom a few times, hoping maybe she could offer help or support. "Mom, I'm living in the basement now, and Linda is making me pay for things that aren't my fault." "Oh honey," Mom said tiredly, "that sounds difficult, but I can't help you right now. I'm barely making ends meet, and I don't have room for you. I'm not asking to move in, I just need someone to talk to." "Look, Monica, I know it's hard, but you have to tough it out. If you leave now, you'll lose college. You don't want to end up like me, working dead-end jobs." Even my own mother was telling me to accept the abuse. I felt abandoned by everyone who was supposed to care about me. Graduation was finally here, 4 years of hell were about to end, and I was going to be free. I had already lined up a place to stay with my friend Jessica from college. She knew about my situation and had offered to let me crash at her apartment until I could get on my feet. I had been secretly applying for jobs and had a few promising interviews lined up. A week before graduation, Dad asked me when the ceremony was. I was so done with their fake concern that I didn't hold back. "Why do you care? You're not invited anyway." Dad's face turned red with anger. "What do you mean we're not invited? I've been paying for your education for 4 years. You mean you've been paying with Grandpa's inheritance money?" I shot back. "And I've been working like a slave in this house to earn every penny of it. I've cooked, cleaned, babysat, and put up with your wife's abuse for years. I don't owe you anything." That's when Linda pulled out her little notebook. "Well, since you want to talk about what you owe us, let's go through your debts. The pipe repair was $800. The scratched coffee table was $200. The broken dishes over the years add up to $300. The carpet cleaning after you spilled that drink was $150. It all adds up to $10,000, Monica." I couldn't believe she was serious. $10,000 for made-up damages? That's insane, Linda. It's not made up, it's all written down right here. When you start working, you'll need to pay us back every cent. I'm not paying you anything, I'm leaving after graduation and I'm never coming back. Dad looked shocked. "You can't just leave, Monica. You have responsibilities here." "My only responsibility is to myself. I'm 22 years old and I'm done being your unpaid servant." That night I packed up my few belongings from the basement. I didn't have much, mostly clothes, some books, and my laptop. Everything else in that house belonged to them anyway. The next morning, I moved in with Jessica. For the first time in years, I slept in a real bedroom with actual sunlight coming through the windows. The week leading up to graduation was the best week I'd had in years. I could eat when I wanted, sleep as long as I needed, and not worry about someone criticizing everything I did. Jessica was amazing, she even helped me practice my valedictorian speech. Yeah, that's right, after everything they put me through, I was graduating as valedictorian. All those hours studying in that horrible basement had paid off. I was going to give the graduation speech in front of the entire class and their families. On graduation day, I was getting ready backstage when someone told me my family had shown up after all. I looked out at the audience and there they were, Dad, Linda, Amy, and Jake sitting in the third row. Linda was already taking pictures and posting them on social media, probably getting ready to play the role of the proud stepmother. As I stood there in my cap and gown, looking at them in the audience, I realized this was my chance. They had come expecting to hear me thank them publicly. They probably thought I'd mention how grateful I was for their support and sacrifice. But I had a different plan. I walked up to the podium and started my speech normally. Thank you all for being here today. I want to thank my professors and classmates for making these 4 years so meaningful. Then I looked directly at where my family was sitting. I could see Linda with her phone out, probably recording everything. Dad had this expectant look on his face like he was waiting for his moment of recognition. But I also want to talk about perseverance, I continued. About what it means to survive and succeed even when the people who are supposed to support you try to tear you down instead. I saw Linda's smile start to fade. Dad looked confused. For the past 4 years, I've been living as a servant in my own family's house. I was moved to a moldy basement so my stepsister could have my room for her social media videos. I was forced to do all the cooking, cleaning, and childcare while being told I was ungrateful and lazy. The audience was completely silent now, you could hear a pin drop. I was charged fake debts for normal household wear and tear. I was isolated from friends and treated like I was destined to become a failure just like my mother. But here I am, graduating as valedictorian despite everything they did to sabotage me. I pointed directly at the third row. Those people sitting right there are my father and stepmother. They came here today expecting me to thank them publicly, but the only thing I'm thankful for is that I'll never have to see them again after today. The cameras that were recording the ceremony for local TV zoomed in on Dad and Linda. Their faces were bright red with embarrassment and rage. Amy looked like she wanted to disappear into her seat. If anyone out there is living in an abusive situation, please know that it gets better. Don't let anyone convince you that you deserve to be treated badly. You have the right to be free and happy, no matter what your family tells you. By the time I finished my speech, Dad and Linda had already gotten up and practically run out of the building. I watched them push past other families to get to the exit as fast as possible. It was the most satisfying thing I'd ever seen. After the ceremony, so many people came up to me. Students, teachers, even other parents told me they had no idea what I'd been going through and that they were proud of me for speaking out. Some people said they'd been in similar situations and my words had given them hope. The local news aired my speech that night, and it went viral on social media within days. Suddenly relatives I hadn't heard from in years were calling and texting, asking why I'd never told them what was happening. They all said they would have helped if they'd known. Within a week, Dad and Linda were dealing with the consequences. Their coworkers and neighbors had seen the news coverage, and people were asking uncomfortable questions. Linda's social media posts about being a loving stepmother looked pretty ridiculous next to video footage of my graduation speech. They started calling me, begging me to post some kind of retraction. They wanted me to say it was all a joke or that I'd exaggerated for dramatic effect. Linda even said they would sue me if I didn't publish a retraction. But I had something they didn't know about. All those recordings I'd made on my phone over the years. All the photos of the basement conditions and the ridiculous debt notebook. I had evidence of everything I'd talked about in my speech. If you try to sue me, I told them over the phone, I'll release every recording I have. People will hear Linda's voice calling me worthless and you agreeing with her. They'll see pictures of that disgusting basement you made me live in. Do you really want that? A few days later, Linda sent me a text saying I didn't owe them any money and that the debt notebook had been just a joke. She also deleted all her social media posts about me and posted some long rant about how people shouldn't believe everything they see on the internet. But the damage was already done, everyone could see right through her fake explanation. I heard through relatives that Dad got fired from his job a few months later. Apparently his boss didn't want someone with his reputation representing the company. Linda and Dad started fighting constantly because he wasn't bringing in money anymore, and their perfect little family began falling apart. But honestly, I didn't feel guilty about any of it. They had made my life hell for years, and they only cared about the consequences when it affected them. I was finally free to live my own life, and it felt amazing. I got a good job, moved into my own apartment, and started building the life I'd always wanted. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing my family so publicly, but I don't. That graduation speech was the moment I finally took control of my own story, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.